Hello everybody, it's Karen. Welcome back. I'm sorry I haven't posted a video for a while. I've had about 4 or 5 starts at making a video, and then I just thought, oh, nobody wants to see that one, Karen. So I kind of lost my video mojo or something, I think. But I'm back with this one today, and as you can see, it's all about using up those scraps. So right here, I've got all my scraps sorted into colors. And I have some double-sided adhesive on that plain cardstock, and you've seen this a million times. I'm just gluing these down, sticking them down to make those card fronts. Now, what's different is this card design, which I saw somewhere online, and I no longer remember where I saw it or who did it. I don't remember if it was on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, but so I apologize to whoever it was who did it if you're watching, because I just honestly don't remember. But you can see there I've cut my card base from the corner, right-hand corner to the fold line. And then that triangular piece that comes off you can just cover in the same way that I covered these pieces. I've trimmed this one down to fit on the inside, and I also trimmed my triangular piece just slightly so that I would have a white border showing here. Now ignore that little green sticky note to the right. I changed this up a little bit. I changed the dimensions, so you'll see that here in a second. But I'm just gluing this down to the front of that triangle. Now this is the right one. You want to cut a piece of white cardstock that's 3.5 inches by 9 inches and then score it in the middle at 4.5. And I embossed that bottom. I have this little border embossing folder, and I just thought that would be kind of fun. So I'm now gluing this flap to the inside in the center, and the one thing you want to watch is that that triangle will still fit underneath that card fold on the inside there. So I'm just making sure it will all fold the right way, because the flap will be on the front. So I'm just sticking that down, folding it down, and there you go. Now to decorate that, I just had some paper flowers, and I've got some distress ink and prize ribbon and peacock feathers, I think that is. And because this isn't watercolor cardstock, it doesn't pick up the color terribly well. I just made sure the paper was wet first before dipping it into that ink. So there I've glued those on once they dried, added a few pearls. You could put a sentiment on the front, but I left this because I really wasn't sure what I was going to use this one for. But I just think it's kind of a pretty fold. Okay, so here I've got some bigger scraps. Now I color code my scraps and I store them in a sheet protector inside some big magazine folders from IKEA. And I store that on my collage shelf. So here I am just putting down those different size widths and lengths of solids and pattern papers, and I'm just randomly putting them on in all different directions, as you can see there. And I've left grout lines in between each piece, so there's adhesive showing through there. Now these are micro beads, and I've made that paper pouch because these would go all over your desk instantly. So the paper pouch sort of helps hold them in place, and I'm just pushing them into that sticky adhesive there with my finger, wiping off anything that's on the excess around the edges, and then I just use a bone folder to press down from the back, or I put the release paper on the front and press down that way. But once they are pressed down, they don't come off. It's really kind of fun, and it gives a really interesting texture to the card. I don't think you could die cut this, or I wouldn't even want to trim it, I don't think, with my trimmer. So be sure you've got what you want before you put the beads down. And now on this one, this is a second piece that I did. I'm sprinkling on some silver embossing powder. Now I couldn't use my anti-static powder tool on this because it would have taken away the stickiness of the adhesive. So you're going to see that on that foiled cardstock there, or the glittery cardstock rather, the embossing powder kind of stuck to it, but it didn't really bother me too much. It kind of blended in with it fairly well, so I left that. But that would be something to think about. So on the left it's the beads, and on the right it's the silver embossing powder. Now I still had strips, little tiny strips, and so I've got a scrap piece of double-sided adhesive here, and I'm just sticking these straight across in a random pattern, and this is what I came up with, which I trimmed down, and I've used that there now in the bottom right corner of this piece, and these were more the reds and oranges and pinks. And I'm putting the beads on these as well, just pushing them in. And there, I think you can see the beads there. It's really kind of fun. It's a different look for a card front. Now on this one, that little scrap piece had already been die cut, so I thought that was an interesting idea to maybe die cut, you know, border dies onto some of my pieces. So here you can see the flowers and the hearts were die cut and filled with the beads. Okay, here's an acetate card. I am making cards out of all of these to show you afterwards, just FYI. So on this one, I have my card base there, and I'm marking just slightly in from where that red scrap piece would go. And I've already, it's a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and I've already cut a piece of acetate here that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And now I'm trimming off that card front where I left that mark, and I've put double-sided adhesive tape on the top and bottom of this, and I'm lining up my acetate now with the bottom edge, and then holding that in place, holding the flap down on top, and just sticking that acetate on so that it's all lined up correctly with the card base. And then I like to really push that acetate in with my bone folder, and then I just started gluing scraps on. Now I did die cut, or not die cut, but I cut 2 each of each strip that I did so that I could put them on the inside to cover what was going to show through on the acetate. And I have to say it also thickened up the acetate a little bit. I would use the thickest acetate that you've got for this, or even double it perhaps if it's really thin acetate that you have. So here on the inside now, I'm just going to glue these strips down over top of where I've already glued them on the front. And then just trim those off. And there's the card. So it can either be a top folding card, this one, or side folding. It really doesn't matter actually. Okay, so who doesn't have these? I have so many of these, and I try to use them for sentiments or to make dimension beneath die cuts, but I have so many of them. And so here I've just started sticking them down. I stuck some down in layers of 2 or 3 or 4 just for the variation in height, and I've got some more of these little paper strips that I'm sticking on this card front. So that's what I ended up with at the end. And you can see the dimension there, so it's got some texture to it, which I always like. I think that adds a lot of fun to the card. Okay, so here are the cards that I've come up with. This was the beaded one, and I've just, basically I took everything from my extra images and sentiments. I had to die cut a few sentiments, but that's just got some flowers and the wishes sentiment. This was my more masculine attempt at a card. So I don't know if that was successful or not, but it's not very feminine. Okay, this one I used that's a Simon Says Stamp Happy Birthday circle die, and I just cut that 3 or 4 times in white to add beneath it. I put some vellum in the circle of that, and that flower is from Creative Expressions. This one, I had that foiled sentiment in my extra stash, and I had that flower and that butterfly. It was a sticker of some kind. I don't even know why I have it or had it, so I put it on there. I thought it matched pretty well. This little toucan is from Creative Expressions, and the flowers and the leaves are as well, and I think that Happy Hello sentiment was from them. Now on the inside, if you don't want your writing to show through, you could put a little flap card so that you write on the inside flap. Okay, this one I just turned into a sympathy card. It was fairly simple, I thought, and maybe suitable for a sympathy card. But I still have pattern paper left over. So here I am marking off 1/2 inch sections. Now it could be 3/4 of an inch or an inch. This is completely different, guys. I'm making beads, as in jewelry beads. So Completely different way to use your scraps, but I'm cutting from the mark at the top down to the bottom right corner, and that gives me this long tapered triangular piece. And then I just rotate my paper so the corner is level at the top, and I'm cutting right down to that 1/2 inch mark on the bottom. So what you end up with are two long triangular pieces that together would make one 1/2 inch segment. So that's that piece there. That makes 2 beads. Now this one I'm cutting straight, and I'm doing this just to show you there are so many different ways to make beads. This is just a couple, and you guys, there are tons of videos on YouTube if you're interested on how to make paper beads. So maybe have a look there if this is of interest to you. But I am just using my bone folder to curl those papers, and that's a little kitchen bamboo skewer that I'm using there. I'm rolling that the wide piece of the triangular section over it and putting a little bead of glue, and then you want to roll this so that that tail stays centered over that the base. Now there are actual paper bead roller tools that you can buy, and I have to say I did all of these beads in one day, and my fingers were quite sore by the end of the day from rolling them up with this bamboo skewer. So I think if you're going to do more of these, the bead roller might be a better tool, or a quilling tool would also help. I'm sure that would work. So once I get to the end, I am sticking a little bit of glue all along the end and finishing rolling this right up. And there you can see it's got a nice center, and it's a slightly tapered bead, this one. But it doesn't look like the paper really when it started. So sometimes the ugliest papers work really well for these beads. So it's a great way to experiment and try out using up some of your stash. So this is the straight rectangular piece, and I'm doing it exactly the same way. I start rolling, add some glue, and I actually like to add glue as I'm going along, because if you lose the tension on these, you end up unrolling and unwinding back to where you did last put glue on, I found. So every now and again I stop and I just add a little bead of glue and then just keep rolling. And then again at the very end I'm going to put some more glue on and roll that right up. So those are the two different shapes. So the one on the right is the straight rectangular piece, and the one on the left is the triangular one that is more tapered. But they both have the same size opening because you're using the skewer for this. And as you can see, I just cut a whole bunch of different colored pieces of paper. I was going for a rainbow assortment of beads, and all different sizes, different widths. They were all slightly different. And so here, I have got that bead on a skewer again, and I'm rolling it in my Versamark ink. I've made a little foil pouch, and I've put some ultra thick embossing powder, just clear ultra thick embossing powder, and I rolled it in that, heat set it, and while it's still hot you can roll it again to get a bit more embossing powder on for more shine. Now I did see one video where they used distress resist spray, and that gave a shine as well. I didn't try that, but that might be something to think about. So the one on the left is the unembossed bead, and the one on the right was the embossed one, so it goes a bit darker. But this is what I made out of those. I was so happy with this. These little beads were from Michael's. I think it was $6 or $7 Canadian, which really was inexpensive. I've got so many left over, but I've made a necklace and a bracelet out of this. So there you can see, they're not even, they're not the same, but I like that about it. I think that just gives it a real unique charm, and what a great gift that would be for somebody. So that's another idea, you guys, for using up those scraps. So thank you very much for joining me, everybody. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you'll come back for the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.